Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. I am so happy to be joined by the Honorable Mercedes Marquez, who is the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Housing and Urban Development, who is here representing President Obama and Secretary Sean Donovan, both of whom have been incredible partners for the rebuilding of the city of New Orleans. Mercedes has been here with us many, many times, and I'm so happy that she came back again. But she actually visited with us before this entire group was sworn into office and has actually been here from the beginning and has been an incredible partner. She is a housing expert who has worked across the country, worked in the city of Los Angeles for a very long time, and had a great reputation when she left there before she assumed the position that she has in the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I also have Barbara Poppy, who is the director of the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. Barbara, where are you? So they can see you. Everywhere I go across the country, I run into Barbara. And every time I do that, she says, what can I do to help the city of New Orleans? So, but we're very happy to have you, and thank you so much for coming. Wendy Velos, who is with Strong Cities, Strong Communities, and representing SAMHSA, is with us. Eric Caulfield, who is the team leader for Strong Cities, Strong Communities. Julie Catalier, the director of the Southeast Louisiana Veterans Healthcare System. Julie, raise your hand. An incredible partner who is the point person for building the Veterans Administration Hospital, and who on behalf of Secretary Shinseki is here to communicate his strong support for ending homelessness for veterans in a very short period of time. Kurt Weigel, the president and CEO of the Downtown Development District, is with us. Stacy Horn-Koch, who's the Director of Homeless Policy and Neighborhood Services, and the co-chairs of this entity, Judge Jay Zaney, a federal judge and a great partner. Judge, it's nice to see you. Sheriff Marlon Guzman, who is with us today, and Jade Brown Russell, who is the co-chair as well. We also are surrounded by a number of deputy mayors, other community leaders, and other members of this task force. As many of you know, ending homelessness is a priority not only for the president, but for me and for the people of the city of New Orleans, not only here but across the country. It is not a new problem. 6 years ago, when Katrina hit, I said that Katrina did not cause all of our problems, but it did make more obvious the things that we had that were special and wonderful. It also made glaringly obvious the things that we had in this country that were very troubling. It spotlighted in many ways vulnerable populations, including the poor, poverty, and in homelessness. Today we have nearly 6,500 people, based on our estimates, that are in the vulnerable population that we are attempting to address today. These not only involve families and veterans, but kids as well. And in the United States of America, this is an unacceptable situation. It is a problem that can be fixed, and it is one that if we all work together, we can certainly find an answer to. And so we decided to take action. On January 2011, I hired a director of homelessness policy and neighborhood services. She is standing behind me today. In June, we decided to bring everybody together. You've heard me use the words. You've actually teased me about them. They are, and write them down. I'll spell them for you. Facilitate, link, and leverage. For those of you that haven't heard that before, what that is a recognition that in a world of dwindling resources, in a world where government has, in some instances, gotten too big and too inefficient, we have to find a way to get together and make it work better. We have to find a way to integrate the delivery systems both on the federal, state, and local level, both horizontally and vertically, to make sure that we don't leave anything on the table. And in this moment of austerity that the country seems to be hurtling towards at this point in time, as I have said many, many times, we can expect that government is going to get smaller because the funding is going to be reduced. And so those of us on the local level, where all of this funnels down to, have to make sure that we're working very, very closely with our federal partners, we're working very, very closely with our state partners, and we're working very closely with our local partners, not only in government, but in the faith-based community and not-for-profit community, to make sure that we create an integrated delivery system so that it all hits the ground at the same time and we can begin to solve problems that heretofore we haven't been able to do because we never talk to each other. And so as a consequence, what we needed as it related to housing and to homelessness is a task force that brought all of the stakeholders together. And you're looking at now representatives of all of those groups. These members represent the government, they represent the business community, they represent the faith-based community and not-for-profits who, before we convened this, were out there doing great work on their own, but found themselves isolated. And what we wanted to do was bring them together with strong support from Housing and Urban Development on the federal level, the Department of Justice, Health and Human Services, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and any other federal agency that has anything to do with this particular subject. And so today I am thrilled with the work that they have produced. One of the teams that I'm told has put together a plan in just 100 days. It generally takes 18 to 24 months across the country. This team came together, and I believe if it's not the first, it's one of the first that has produced such an exhaustive, extensive report that is very thoughtful, that is very truthful, that is very honest, that points out the things that we have that work and the things that we don't, where the gaps in services are, and has come up with not only immediate steps, but a long-term strategic plan with clear goals, which is to end homelessness in the city of New Orleans in 10 years, and in some instances in 5. We have, again, relied on national best practices. Minneapolis is one of the places where we talked to folks there and found out they were doing a great job. There are a couple of other places in the nation that we looked for best practices because, as I mentioned many, many times, there are a lot of other folks around this country that are doing really good things. If they have a good idea, we want it. And we have been all over the country in different areas looking at other models, and this is another best practice that we have brought home. We are uniting the stakeholders. We are having a new approach. It's called a housing first approach. First, we're going to find housing for individuals, then we're going to link them to services. Across the country, the model used to be, no, you can't get into a house until everything else is taken care of. We found out that that was actually upside down. It was a little bit counterintuitive, and so we're moving in a different direction. On top of creating a new governance model that requires all of the stakeholders to be at the table so that the city can speak with one voice and we can have one clear policy on behalf of the city government, we also have come up with 3 signature projects that this team will be working on. One of them is to partner with the Downtown Development District. And what's going to happen is the Downtown Development District will help take the lead on linking those in the Downtown Development District without a home to housing services. And so Kurt Weigel is here with that group. Secondly, we're going to create a resource center. The city and the Veterans Administration are going to begin to redevelop an idea about how to use the old Veterans Hospital or a portion thereof to be a resource center for veterans. And the Homelessness Secretary Shinseki is personally committed to this project. Julie Catalira is his point person on that. And finally, we're going to create a homeless trust. And this is going to be a fund that's set up at the Greater New Orleans Foundation in order for us to gather private and philanthropic funding for housing initiatives. Now, this should not be a surprise to anybody. Every initiative that we have announced since I have been in office, what I have said is the only things that work in the city of New Orleans right now, or I should say the only things that have worked well, are those that have been a partnership between the private sector and the public sector and private philanthropic dollars. You know that we have a team of people that work here whose sole mission is to make sure that we generate foundation money. We have generated over $80 million in new money from outside sources just in the short period of time that we've been here. This is a 10-year plan. As I have said, it's a result of a partnership, and we believe that it is the way forward for governing in the United States of America. This isn't an easy task. Nobody ever said it would be. This is just the beginning, but the first part was to understand what we were dealing with. The second part was to come up with a governing model that brought all of the stakeholders together. The third part was actually to have a plan. And now we have all of those things. We never had that before. We relied on the expertise of Mercedes and other people who had done this in other parts of the country. And now our focus is on implementation and making sure that we get to what I call the real hard work of governing, because that's what it is. And it's going to require a daily vigilance. It's going to require challenging each other. It's going to require breaking down boxes that had previously existed. The entire point, though, is to make sure that every American citizen has what they're entitled to, is that a roof over their head. And so I want to commend this group. You guys did a fantastic job under very difficult circumstances. You did it in a short period of time, and you've come up with a plan that I think is a model for the country. And I'll close with reiterating this. New Orleans has become this nation's most immediate laboratory for innovation and change, whether we're talking about fighting crime, housing, health care, because we have had to, because we have suffered things that people across the country have not suffered, from Katrina to Rita to Ike to Gustav to the BP oil spill to the national recession. We have had to really struggle with finding a new way. And we've had to do it in one of the worst decades that the United States of America has lived through in a very, very long period of time. But the people of New Orleans, through their incredible resilience, their just willingness to get back up and do what is necessary, because we believe that we can create a better lives for ourselves, has really challenged not only us but the rest of the nation. And we continue to do that. Out of necessity breeds innovation. We've had a lot of necessity, so we got a lot of innovation. And with that, I want to thank everybody, and I want to ask the Assistant Secretary, who's gotten to be a very dear friend and is really a great leader in housing policy across the country and a great advocate, I might add, for the City of New Orleans. Please help me welcome Assistant Secretary Mercedes Marquez.
Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias. I'm so pleased to be here today. On behalf of President Obama and Secretary Sean Donovan, greetings, congratulations, and a continued commitment to the City of New Orleans. Such beautiful work has been done, and the mayor, before he even took office, was already bold in his vision and asked us as a leadership team from HUD to come down and spend a Sunday and have a long talk going over all the things that were necessary. And I think it's important to put this accomplishment in that perspective, that before he took office, the gaps in systems, the gaps in understanding, the gaps in capacity were so great that they couldn't reach out and touch one another. And so we had to spend an awful lot of time, but really not all that much time, just a lot of work, to bring it together. Always led. A great leader always has a vision that's right out of reach and pushes everyone to get there. And that's what the mayor has done. And our job has been to have the federal government be a model partner, right? That whatever the question was, we're willing to look at it. Whatever the gap might be, we're willing to understand how to fill it. And I am blessed at the Department of Housing and Development to work with an incredible team of people that are experts in their field, and on that particularly Anna Leva, who's our Director of Homelessness nationally, has spent a lot of time here working with this group. It's been our pleasure to help underwrite the process to get you to a plan in 100 days, your plan in 100 days, and it's my pleasure today to announce that HUD is re-signing our contract, our relationship with the City of New Orleans, to help finance the next phase of implementation.
I love that. Thank you. I said.
So, thank you. We're going to continue with that. And as I said, within a little bit more time, I'm hoping I'll be back here with the mayor again to now talk about how it is that this homeless plan fits into his vision for housing overall. We're already working on all that, whether it's been on public housing, whether it's been in systems within the Community Development Department, and now the homeless plan. So next will come the vision for housing for the whole City of New Orleans, and I'll be thrilled to come back and celebrate that with you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, good morning. I am Barbara Poppy with the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. I come with greetings from our current council chair, Labor Secretary Hilda Solis, and 18 other federal agencies applaud the work that's been done here. I want to really thank the mayor for his leadership. From the moment I met him, he did tell me they were going to get this done, and it's great to see we're at this point. I also want to call out in particular Stacy for her tireless work on this. I know she was working on the plan even before she stepped into this position. So really want to congratulate Stacy for bringing all the pieces together, because it really is a tremendous amount of work. I also want to acknowledge our other federal partners besides HUD, the Department of Justice, Health and Human Services, and the VA. Just incredible work in this city here, which is so important. The whole homeless services working group is to be commended. I hear you had some really important meetings and conversations, and that enthusiasm is what's going to carry you forward. I also want to note the President's work on Strong Cities, Strong Communities initiative, and how that was launched as a way to help coordinate other resources across the federal government to help with your economic and community development. And we see this work of this plan as being integral to establishing the strategies in the 10-year plan. In 2010, the Obama administration launched Opening Doors, the first ever federal strategic plan to prevent and end homelessness. We are delighted that your plan here locally builds on the framework that we developed at the Interagency Council based on best practices that have worked across the country. President Obama noted last year as the plan was launched, and he said, as we undertake this effort, investing in the status quo is no longer acceptable. So we commend you on your willingness not to be satisfied with the status quo, but really being willing to work to make your community the best in the country and tackle this really challenging issue. The federal plan has 4 ambitious goals. The first is to finish the business of ending chronic homelessness. The second is to prevent and end veterans' homelessness. Thirdly, prevent and end families, youth, and children's homelessness. And finally, set a path to ending all types of homelessness. We are really delighted that your plan reflects the population goals that we laid out in Opening Doors. Most importantly, though, you've adopted best practices strategies in 5 areas. One is the theme of collaboration and leadership. The second is the importance of access to affordable housing, increased economic security, improving your health and stability, and retooling your crisis response system. So now you're at the point where you've got a plan, so the time is to act, and that is where the real challenge and the excitement begins. I come to you from Columbus, Ohio, before I had this position, and just want to share with you what I've observed across the country as well as in my work in Columbus, and that was that first, you're going to have to focus on continuing collaboration and the alignment of the resources. As the mayor said, it's really important that you have these synergized and you're moving forward together. Now is the time to be more creative than ever, putting down the barriers that you've had to collaboration and moving forward. Second, as the mayor has said, you've got to hold yourself accountable for results. A good plan is not good enough. You need to see those results. What gets measured gets done, and transparency in those results are going to build confidence. And thirdly, I think it's important to celebrate your successes, the small ones, the large ones, all along the way. Continue to build that path because it'll give you trust and confidence that you can really get this job done. As your federal partner, I'm here to pledge that we at the U.S. Interagency Council will be your partners in the days ahead, and we'll continue to work with our federal agencies to bring the resources and help break down any barriers that you have in this community. So I just remind everyone in this room, as I do everywhere that I travel, it's not just about the commitment of the president. It's not just the commitment of the mayor. It's actually the commitment of each and every person in this room to see that together we can one day end homelessness, and specifically that you will be successful in ending homelessness in this great city of New Orleans. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Cataleo from the Veterans Administration. Julie.
Thank you, Mayor Landrieu. Well, I'm thrilled to be here today to be a part of this critical initiative that will save lives, drive recovery, and bring visionary change to our city. It's commendable that one of the strategic goals of the Strong Cities, Strong Communities plan is to end homelessness. It's completely consistent with Secretary Shinseki's highest priority of ending homelessness among veterans across our nation within 5 years. That's ambitious. In New Orleans, it's estimated that 1 out of every 7 homeless individuals is a veteran. That includes 500 veterans living on the street each and every night, veterans who served to protect our way of life. 1 homeless vet is 1 too many. But ending homelessness is more than just getting people off the streets. It's about providing jobs and a way of living independently. The new VA Medical Center project is a phenomenal vehicle to do just that. VA is committed to reaching out to homeless veterans and all citizens to pave a path to education, training, and developmental opportunities that creates jobs now, but also prepares them for sustainable employment throughout their lives. Strong partnerships, like the one VA has with the City of New Orleans and its community partners, are how we'll achieve great and noble goals. As our mayor described, what's more honorable than the renovation of part of the old VA hospital for reuse as a homeless community resource and referral center that serves all veterans and all citizens? We have no greater mission than to prevent and end homelessness, especially for those brave men and women who answered the call without hesitation when asked to serve.
Thank you, Julie. So, thank you very much for those. You've just heard from 3 federal partners that represent collectively the entirety of the delivery system on the federal level. As I have said, the whole point of SC2 and the work from my administration from the moment I took office was to make sure that there was no light between the federal government and the executive branch of the city government across all the areas. And so as we talk about homelessness, Secretary Marquez mentioned to you that it's got to be completely integrated. So on the ground, as you see our initiatives from Save Our Sons, where you saw the police chief, you saw James Carter with Criminal Justice Coordinator, you saw Karen DeSalvo with mental health, substance abuse. Now you have the same thing here. So Cedric Grant, who is a deputy mayor for infrastructure, along with Brian Lawler, who is represented here, Brian, where are you, for housing, to Dr. DeSalvo with mental health, to Stacy Horn-Koch, who is the director of homelessness and the quarterback for this particular initiative. We're working here across agencies, breaking down the stovepipes and then linking us together. And so, Stacy, I want to call you up and thank you so much for the work that you have done in leading this team and to talk a little bit about the plan from your perspective. Stacy Horn-Koch.
Thanks, Mayor. On the Monday after Thanksgiving, I really can't think of a better day to announce this plan. First of all, I'm very grateful to the mayor for giving me the privilege of working with everybody in here, because this is everybody's plan. Everybody worked on it and we developed it. And to be grateful for our federal partners that have invested so much in making this plan happen. But we had members of the community. We had business members, members from Unity, all the not-for-profit homeless service providers. We had community constituents and representatives from all the universities, and it was a privilege to watch and be part of. This is not one person's plan. This is the city's plan. This is a plan that shows that we now have an administration that recognizes the need and the benefit for investing in human capital, for developing a plan that recognizes the dignity and the rights of all the people that are involved in providing services to the homeless, that we're all part of one community, we're all part of one city. So I'm very proud that together we all developed a plan that's based on national best practices, that is about transparency, that is about continued inclusion of the public in everything that we do. And although I think I'm very excited about our plan, the rubber really meets the road with implementation and the development of the New Orleans Interagency Council to develop measurable goals and to work on keeping us on track for those goals is a very exciting prospect. And I expect that all of you who were involved in the development of the plan will continue to be involved in the implementation. And it's been my privilege to work with all of you. Thanks.
All right. I think at this point in time we'll be happy to open it up to any questions that.
So what can we see first? I know it's a 10-year plan and this is still far-reaching, but what kind of things should we be able to see first and how soon?
Well, after this meeting, we're going to have a meeting, a roundtable meeting with some of our federal partners and some of the providers that have worked so hard on the plan. I think our first step is to certainly get the New Orleans Interagency Council up and running, establish the committees, establish the members. But all of the initiatives that were listed as priority initiatives, we plan on getting up and running within this first year.
There seem to be lacking some specifics on funding here. So how much will the VA
number for the overall plan, and does VA have a certain price tag to it in particular?
Well,
Sure. Well, although I'm not prepared to tell you today a specific dollar amount for funding, here's what I'll tell you is that
Is that for the overall plan or just for
this is for the VA, and this specifically relates to the reuse of the old hospital as a community resource and referral center. What I'd like to do is to tag on to Stacy's question for just a minute. We're this afternoon having a meeting with Deputy Mayor Cedric Grant and the architects who have agreed pro bono, which is worth many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars, to do a proposed design of the resource center. These are the architects who are currently designing the VA hospital. This is their national give back project, and we're very excited about it. So that begins this afternoon. VA will actually be providing a great deal of the funding for the startup and first 3 years running of the resource center, and we're negotiating those dollars now. So we're actively pursuing it, and we're on the way.
If I may, Mayor, question for you. Has the Occupy NOLA movement had any bearing on this? Has it made you rethink homelessness or made it a priority?
No.
It's homeless, it's a homeless encampment essentially that is sprung up in front of your city hall.
Well, there are a couple of things. First of all, as you may know, many of the members of the Occupy Wall Street movement say they're not homeless, that they're exercising their First Amendment right to speak to the government and to redress their grievances under the First Amendment. As many mayors across the country have retorted, that's wonderful. But everybody is limited in their First Amendment rights, especially in time, place, and manner, and there'll come a time and a place and a way to begin to enunciate that. One of the things that has occurred across the country is members who are really part of what we would call an authentic homeless population have in some instances moved into the space where Occupy Wall Street currently exists. Those of you that have been following this know, really, and Nancy, the answer to your question is this group already got started. About 3 months ago, they put together a very thoughtful plan to basically house individuals that had moved from Canal and Claiborne over to St. Charles Avenue and Claiborne and Stacy and St. Charles. And Stacy's team and this entire team put together resources that already existed and actually did a really wonderful job in making sure that many of those individuals, to the extent that was possible, had some kind of temporary or permanent housing. Of course, they didn't get everybody, and a couple of the folks moved across the street. Our estimate is about 20% of the folks across the street actually fall into that category. The rest of the individuals that are over there are young men and women that ride the rails across the country and come to New Orleans periodically over time, and then the rest of the group over there is Occupy New Orleans. So we're aware of that. We continue to give case management services to the homeless population that's over there, and we will continue to use our resources to make sure that we link them to the extent that we can in this integrated new model that we're working. Secondly, in terms of funding, one of the things that I think is a great question is how much it's going to cost. But some people ask the question as though it's always going to be new money. The point here is to take money that already exists and actually move them in a targeted direction so that you can get a greater value from them. So, for example, on the VA question, Julie answered that fairly clearly. But, for example, from Cedric's point of view or Brian's point of view or Karen's, when you take mental health dollars or you take substance abuse dollars and you partner with some of the housing dollars and some of the homeless dollars, you actually get a lot more done. That's where that integration comes from. And money that would have been spent is just being redirected in a thoughtful way because we have to do more with less. I guess I have to keep repeating this over and over again because people will accuse me of not saying it, although I've said it every time I have a chance to speak. The world is changing dramatically. The financial picture right now throughout the world with Greece, with Ireland, with the European Union, the consequence of stalemate in Washington, D.C., is going to result in something that is really, really clear. I don't know how it's all going to work out, but I am certain of this. The government's going to get smaller. Now, that's going to happen. I don't know exactly how fast it's going to happen. It's actually happening as we speak. I don't know how far it's going to go, but I can tell you that the world is changing as it relates to how much money the government is going to have to do the work that it did before. And so, as a consequence, if the public continues to want to have the services that they've had, we have to develop new delivery systems and new models. The ones that have worked in New Orleans in the past 5 years, and we've tried a lot of things, but the ones where we have had success always include the same thing, which is partnerships between the private sector and the public sector, with a lot of involvement from the faith-based community, the not-for-profits, and the philanthropic community. Where we have had those 5 or 6 partners with a whole bunch of other things, we've been able to produce a better result than we had before. And that is one of the things that we're doing here. You see great systems change going on in the city government because that is the mantra. So every issue that we deal with, it doesn't matter what it is. It can be NORD. Again, it could be the police department. It could be health care. You are going to see systems change. You're going to see integration, and you're going to see partnership using the same dollars that were there and leveraging them in a way that they haven't been done before in order to produce the result, or we're not going to do it. Or we're going to change what it is that we're doing because there's not enough money to do what we did in the past. Yes?
Where are we looking at housing? Where are we going to put the homeless population?
You want to take that?
Sure.
All over the place. But as I'm going to let her answer the question specifically, but I want you to just to take you back to Secretary Marquez's comments. We're trying to build an integrated system. Today we're talking about the homeless population, but we also have extensively been talking about blighted housing. So Nora is here, Jeff is in the back with here, Brian is here with trying to develop housing. We also have Hanno. So we have those 4 levels that we continue to work on. Today is the homeless piece, but it is completely integrated into that system. So it has to do with housing stock, it has to do with renovated blighting housing, it has to do with immediate services and mental health, and I'll let Stacy talk about the technical integration of those systems, if you will.
So thank you, Mayor. So as Martha's often told me, affordable housing and a generous availability of affordable housing is the long-term solution to homelessness. But for this project and going forward to address the unprecedented number of homeless people that are here in New Orleans, we're going to take mostly the scattered site approach to developing permanent supportive housing throughout the city. We also have a number of project-based developments that are coming online through Unity. But through our Home NOFA, both for affordable housing, they're weighted to favor developers that are willing to work with homeless people. And so when the mayor talks about integration, this is a perfect example. So we have a number of blighted houses out there. We have a number of lots that require infill. Why not direct our funds to develop affordable housing towards those type of buildings to put people into scattered site housing where they have the benefit of becoming part of a community. This type of approach honors pretty much what the community's been asking us for. They're saying, let's not have huge concentrations in any one area. Let's work on getting people scattered throughout the city and integrated into our own communities. So that's
And on top of that, if I just might add, the integration, to speak to comments that Julie Catalier made, if you have a job, you can afford a house. If you have job training and we can link you to a job, then you can afford a house. And so one of the reasons why the VA is such an important partner, not only in the construction of the new hospital, but with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, is to take the individuals that are now in public housing units, make sure we have job training that is consistent with the kind of job that's going to be available in the Veterans Administration footprint now, begin that job training, and then, of course, if the individual has a job, their ability to afford a house or pay more is part of the housing piece as well. That goes into the issue of integration. So we will be doing all of those things. We actually have started, Cedric Grant has had a number of different major public meetings making sure that we link up the contracts coming out of the VA with local contractors, making sure that we have job training for the specific kind of jobs, not only to build the VA, but to actually work in the VA hospital as a phlebotomist or a med tech, or the next generation could be the doctor, and the generation after that actually the individual that runs the whole family, to create generational wealth. And we're trying to create systems, delivery systems that actually produce that result.
Take the last
One more.
I'll take it. Great.
Did you already have two? Go ahead.
No, I mean, a lot of people would argue that failed initiatives, failed policies in regards to housing issues.
Such as?
Well, I mean, when you're dealing with homeless, everyone talks about charity, for instance, as being when it was closed, that people did not have a place, a recognizable place
To live?
go to get service.
Okay.
Not to be. But I mean, do you feel like we're picking up the pieces of failed policies after Katrina almost? Closing of charity, the raising of the public housing, the scarcity of housing. I mean, we still have this huge homeless problem.
Well, first of all, the city got beat to hell by a historic storm that destroyed, hurt 500,000 physical units and destroyed 250,000 houses. There's never been a city in the history of America or one in the world that's had to rebuild from that. So it's a little bit pejorative to say that what we're trying to do is rebuild after failed policies. Katrina didn't cause the problems. We've been having failed policies in this country for the last 45 years. What we're trying to do is not rebuild the city that we were, but we will build the city that we want to become. And as a consequence, you have to take a look at things that never worked before. For those of us that remember what some of the housing developments were like back in the day, maybe before you were born. I don't know how old you are. So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You look pretty young. But in 1988, when I was elected to the legislature, I represented the area where the old St. Housing development was. And for people who remember that place with nostalgia because they grew up there, sometimes they have amnesia about how many kids were actually killed on the corner every day. And I remember the people who were there. When the Mary Buck Health Clinic was opened the first day, which has now become the St. Thomas Health Clinic, very few people today would argue that Mary Buck was better than the St. Thomas Health Clinic today that's going to open in a brand new renovated building. This month it did mammograms for 300 women. Never had the capacity to do it before. It's better today than it was before. The vision that exists was better. And so what we're trying to do now is to create a better model for the future that makes sense rather than rebuilding what we were. I was not in favor of putting a new hospital in the old charity building. There is a new way. The VA and the University Medical Center are going to create in excess of 12,000 jobs. It's going to be a catalyst economically for the city of New Orleans. It's a smarter way to invest limited dollars. We will do something really wonderful with the old charity building, and it will be of great use to us. But that is not a failed policy. It's also not a failed policy to try to reorganize the housing units from having dense concentration to what we have now. Really challenge most people. Really almost, I don't want to challenge anybody because they're just people out there who will be what they're going to be and say what they're going to say. But if you go to the new areas where Lafitte is, or you go to where the old St. Bernard housing project was, or you go to the new St. Thomas, it's better, it's safer, it's more sustainable over time. Now, you may argue that they're not enough, and of course that's obvious to anybody. We don't have enough of anything. We don't have enough money, we don't have enough resources, and we got more problems than any city deserves to have. And so it's not a surprise that we have to struggle our way out of it. But this team continues to march on every day and I think produce a really good result. Thank you.